MLK, and Homewreckers. We gonna get into it. Let's get it. Welcome. First of all, welcome. This is Unsolicited Perspectives. I'm your host, Bruce Anthony, here to lead the conversation in important events and topics that are shaping today's society. Join the conversation and follow us wherever you get your audio podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for our video podcast, YouTube exclusive content, and our YouTube membership. Rate, review, like, comment, share. Share with your friends, share with your family, hell, even share with your enemies. On today's episode, we'll be remembering MLK, talking about homewreckers ruining marriages, and talking about our short attention span. But that's enough of the intro. Let's get to the show. For people who are, frequent listeners and watchers of this show, y'all know that every now and then I throw little shots at Martin Luther King. Oftentimes I'll say Martin Luther the King. Oftentimes I'll talk about how much of a hoe he was because he was cheating, running around with Coretta Scott King. But all joking aside, he is one of the top 5 most important figures in American history. I don't know where in that category he rates, but definitely top 5 because of his contributions to not only civil rights, but also human rights. But it always kind of, agitates me, the hypocrisy that comes around during the day of remembering him, right? His Remembrance Day, Martin Luther King Day. So much so that the current administration is trying to get rid of it. They had to fight like hell to even recognize Martin Luther King's birthday. And it bothers me, the hypocrisy that comes around him and the celebration of this day. Because Martin Luther King Jr., and I know I said the king again, and I'm probably going to say that a lot because I do hold him in very high regard. Martin Luther King Jr. not only has become a sanitized holiday figure, but also a disruptive force who challenged power, capitalism, white comfort, and American hypocrisy. So he's more than just this sanitized holiday figure. His contributions to civil rights and human rights should always be celebrated. But I have a feeling that America loves the idea of MLK, but not the reality of him. And I know this because he's often solely reduced to one speech, one quote, "I have a dream." And he's so much more than that. And so I am taking the time for this first segment of the show to truly remember Dr. Martin Luther King and call out the hypocrisy that I see so many people doing when they remember him on this holiday. So let's start with what he actually stood for, because a lot of times this gets lost in remembering him. Like, people quote it, but they don't actually focus in on what he literally stood for. And he stood for full civil rights, not symbolic progress, right? That's important. It wasn't lip service. He wanted full civil rights. He wanted economic justice and labor rights. And he was opposed to war and U.S. imperialism. So there's going to be a lot of people that you're going to see praise Martin Luther King that aren't for any of those things. They're going to say how important he was, but don't stand for any of the things that he stood for. That's the reason why I said this has become a sanitized holiday, and he's become a sanitized holiday figure, because it's all lip service. It's all symbolic, but it ain't real. He wasn't just a dreamer. He was a disruptor. and a strategist. He fought against the powers. And let me explain something to you guys. There's a lot of people out there now protesting ICE, as well they should. As well they should. And there's a lot of people that are not affected directly by ICE that are out protesting. These are the things that Martin Luther King stood for, right? These are the things. But how much skin do they really have in the game, right? How much skin do protesters that are protesting ICE really have in the game? Because Martin Luther King was out there protesting and he had no rights. People seem to forget, that was so long ago, Jim Crow laws. He was combating legal racism in the face, disrupting it. And because of that, he was under constant threats, constant surveillance, and hated throughout. He faced fatigue, he faced fear, but he had an unwavering commitment to the cause of civil rights, human rights, labor rights, economic justice, opposition to a war. It was the Vietnam War at that time. And he pissed a lot of people off when he opposed the Vietnam War. And he was right. History proves he was right. And U.S. imperialism, like trying to force the sale of Greenland. Going into another country and kidnapping that country's president. That's U.S. imperialism. So once again, I make the point that there's going to be a lot of people that are celebrating the sanitized figure of Martin Luther King, but not the actual person and not what he actually stood for. Because their everyday actions are going against the very things that he died for. And people always say, once again, like I said earlier, that Jim Crow was so long ago. Jim Crow was my parents. Now, yes, I am 45 years old. I'm a middle-aged man. But I'm the first generation born with all of their rights. I'm the first generation where legalized racism now, wasn't a thing for me anymore. That didn't mean that I had it sweet, because progress takes a little time, right? Like, think about it when you're trying to lose weight. You can start working out and eating right in January. You're not going to see results until mid-February. Now, imagine hundreds of years of legalized racism. How long do you think it's going to take when you turn the wheels to eliminate legalized racism and get to the point where everybody is equal? Not even close. I always tell my clients in weight loss, the amount of time that it took you to gain that weight is the amount of time it's going to take you to lose that weight. If we use that same analogy to the history of this country, for 400 years, there was legalized racism. Maybe we get to the point where everybody is legal 400 years after the Civil Rights Movement and the Voting Rights Act. That's not going to be in my lifetime. So the idea of, well, you were born with all your rights, so everything is all good, is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Because there are hundreds of years where America's foot was on the neck of Black folks. And you don't just recover from that just because you take the foot off the neck. There's still bruising, there's still scarring, and for the foot to be on the neck that long, you might not recover. They may have broke your trachea, right? Windpipe might be broken, might not be able to speak well, might not be able to breathe well. That's going to carry on for the rest of your life. I'm using these analogies to show you that just because the laws changed in my parents' lifetime doesn't mean that Martin Luther King's dream was accomplished. That's all I'm trying to say. And it hit close and home to me, because like I said at the top, I joke about Martin Luther King, but I have an immense amount of respect and love for his struggle. And it overwhelmed me. I'm about to be personal, y'all. It overwhelmed me when I went to Memphis because I went to the Lorraine Hotel where he was assassinated. I stood at the spot where he was shot. I saw the hotel room. It's this museum now, and it tells you all about the day that he was assassinated. Tells you what he was doing. They have a display of the food that he ate. The pictures. This man was assassinated. And what was he assassinated for? For fighting for rights? For fighting for freedom? Fighting against legalized racism? Everybody in this country always talks about this country's great because of freedom. He was fighting for it, and he died for it. And at that hotel, I came to tears. I was with somebody, and I teared up, and I had to step away because you recognize the sacrifice this person made for other people, not just himself, not just his family, not just his kids, not just the future grandkids and all that type of stuff, for an entire people, and not just his people, for everybody. Everybody. He sacrificed his life. He is not just a sanitized holiday figure. He is an important person that has to be remembered for the sacrifice that he gave for the cause that was so very, very important. And let's examine the sacrifice he gave, which was his life, right? And why at the top, I said I get kind of like a chuckle from the hypocrisy of certain people who try to remember him, but are actively fighting against all of his ideals and principles. You don't believe me? Well, I got proof. Because I wasn't going to come on here without having proof, so I got proof. Let's compare the anti-civil rights movement, because there was a civil rights movement and there's a pushback, right? And there was a pushback. You can't deny that there was a pushback. There was the Dixiecrats. Yes, they were Democrats. They were the Dixiecrats. They're now the Republican Party in the South. So the idea that a lot of Republicans today try to say, well, those are Democrats that have always been racist, they were Dixiecrats. You are absolutely right. During that time, they were Democrats. They changed parties, much like I'm going to talk about in the second segment with somebody changing party. They changed parties. The Dixiecrats were the overwhelming majority in the South in the 60s. Once Lyndon Baines Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, there was a switch. There was a shift to the Republican Party, and Nixon, running on identity politics, all those people who were Dixiecrats became Republicans. So those people who are Republicans today were the former Dixiecrats. And these were the people that were combating civil rights. They were part of the anti-civil rights movement. Who else is a part of the Republican Party right now? MAGA. What were some of the core ideas of anti-civil rights people and movement, right? The core idea was an opposition that never disappeared. It only rebranded to the MAGA Party. They believed in, and here was the rhetoric in the 60s, that was combating against Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. Here was their rhetoric: law and order. They had outside agitators, or they said that these people who were fighting for civil rights were outside agitators. And they also said it's not the right time for the civil rights movement. Who else says these things? Could it be the MAGA Party? I'm not calling it all Republicans. I'm specifically speaking to MAGA. And by the way, we need the Republicans who are not MAGA to fight against MAGA. And you're starting to see some of these people do that, right? But I'm speaking specifically to MAGA, specifically to them. What do they always? Their number one thing is law and order. That's the same thing that they were saying when they were trying to combat the civil rights movement in the 60s. MAGA is just repeating the same line. They're always talking about these people are outside agitators. That's what they called Martin Luther King. They called him a communist, called him a socialist. Same things that are being weaponized right now by the same grouping of people, just a new generation. They were using back then, and they're using it now. And not the right time is never the right time. It's never the right time for these people to have progress. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about progress, moving us as a society forward. There's never time for that. So there are direct parallels between the anti-civil rights movement of the 60s and MAGA. And as I said, it brings a chuckle because of the contradiction that you're going to have a lot of MAGA people out there celebrating Dr. King when they are actively fighting against every single one of their principles. And what are the principles that these MAGA people are fighting about? The same ones who will celebrate and post something on their website or on their Twitter page or on their Instagram profile. They will celebrate Martin Luther King at the same time voting against voting rights, racial equality, and social justice. That was the attack on DEI. DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion, not quotas. They talk about a meritocracy, but they don't believe in a meritocracy because that's what DEI was doing, was creating a meritocracy, was creating a bigger pool of competitors. But they don't want a bigger pool of competitors because when there's a bigger pool of competitors, you got to compete. And when you got to compete, you go head up against somebody, you might realize that everything that they done told you that you were was a lie. And that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, and that there's somebody else that doesn't look like you that is better, whether that's a person of color or a woman. And that's too big of a pill to swallow. So you'll actively fight against progress. At the same time, celebrating Martin Luther King? It's performative reverence versus active resistance to MLK's ideas. You're performing, but you ain't got your hand in the dirt. MLK would be labeled woke today. Let that hit you. He would be labeled woke today. Woke has been weaponized as this word that has a negative connotation. I almost get ready to smack people when they say woke in front of me. Because I'm like, that's not what the word means. That's not the intention behind it. And you actually want to be woke. You want to be awakened. Everybody talks about the red pill and blue pill. In the Matrix, you had a choice. Stay locked in the system or become aware of the system. That's being woke. And that's been weaponized. Martin Luther King would be woke today. He'd be labeled as woke. He'd be attacked by the very people that's going to celebrate him. You don't see the hypocrisy in it? Like I said, I get a chuckle. I laugh at the people who are so unserious. And those people that are close to me know, I'm going to call you out on it. I'm going to call you out on it. There's nobody close to me that's MAGA. I won't allow anybody to be close to me that's MAGA. Like, that's not happening. But there are some people who are teetering that aren't close to me but have proximity to me. And I pull them on their shit all the time. I'm like, you say this. You say you believe in these things. You say you're celebrating Martin Luther King, but yet you're part of the problem. You're part of the people that are trying to reduce voting rights, who are reducing racial equity, who are reducing social justice. The very principles that Martin Luther King stood on. But yet you're going to praise him? I know I've been preaching. And, I don't like to start the first segment like that, but I definitely wanted to give MLK his real flowers, not a performative flowers, his real flowers. He's one of the top 5 most important figures in this country, and that can't be denied. But what is an absolute fact is that he was vilified when he was alive, celebrated later in death, and became this sanitized figure that everybody could praise. All the while, if he was alive today, he would still be vilified. And that is fascinating, the hypocrisy and the moral gymnastics that people will go through to justify their actions and not acknowledge their faults. But there is a story that truly symbolizes who Martin Luther King was, who his family was, and how his legacy is so very important. I know I've talked about it before, but maybe not in great detail, the connection that Julia Roberts, who is still in my top 5 women of all time, because, oh my God, and Martin Luther King, the Roberts family and Martin Luther King. And I know, y'all are joking with me. You keep calling Martin Luther King. Yeah, it's on purpose. So there is a story that there is a connection between Julia Roberts and Martin Luther King. So Walter and Betty Lou Roberts ran an actors and writers workshop in Atlanta, a children's theater school that was one of the only integrated programs in the area, accepting both Black and white kids. Coretta Scott King reached out to Julia's mother because the King children were being refused by other acting schools due to racism, and the Roberts welcomed them with no hesitation. The Roberts and the Kings became friends through this shared commitment to integration, art, and giving their kids space to learn and perform together. When Julia Roberts was born, her parents were struggling financially and could not afford the hospital bill. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King stepped in and paid the bill as a gesture of gratitude and solidarity for what the Roberts had done for their children and for integrated education. This story and everything I said previously about Martin Luther King's accomplishments is a true reflection of his legacy. It shows a compassion across lines of race and class. The dream was always about a shared humanity, an America where kindness and solidarity replaced fear and division. Maybe honoring MLK today means acting more like the Kings and less like the people who fought against. One time when I was in my youth, I was in a long-term relationship. And like I said, in my youth, before, if you listen and watch this show, I wasn't really a great guy. I love the person that I am today. I detest the person that I used to be. So selfish, so self-centered. Really don't like him. And I used to cheat. Okay? And it's funny because I always put the blame on the women that I was cheating with and even gave them a name. Well, I gave them a title. And one was Homewrecker 1 and one was Homewrecker 2. They were trying to wreck my home because I couldn't control myself. You see the hypocrisy and the childishness in it. But I labeled them Homewreckers. Did you know that there is a statute in a few states where homewrecker is actually a thing, right? And there's a law. And people can sue third parties for wrecking their marriage. I'm not lying to you. That's a real thing. It's called the Alienation of Affection Act or law. It's a type of heart bomb tort that allows a spouse to sue a third party who allegedly stole the affection of their husband or wife and caused the breakup of their marriage. Alienation of affection is actually a real law. Quote unquote, the Homewrecker law. Most states abolished these kinds of lawsuits in the mid-20th century as outdated and misogynistic, but a small handful still recognize them. Currently, reporting notes that North Carolina and only a few other states keep the alienation of affection law on the books. It's still an active law. Now, there was research of certain laws that were still on the books, like sodomy is still on the books in Georgia. Like, these are crazy things. But this law really exists. And there's a lot of married people out there that had their marriages, or divorced people that had their marriages ended because of adultery. And come to find out, if you was in North Carolina, you could have sued. To win, plaintiffs generally must show a couple of things. There was a valid marriage with genuine love and affection. The affection was destroyed or seriously damaged, and the defendant engaged in wrongful, malicious conduct that caused the loss of affection. So let me break that down in layman's terms. You got to prove that there was love in the marriage. You got to prove that the love was destroyed or seriously damaged in the marriage. And then you got to prove that the person that you're suing, the defendant, wrongfully and maliciously caused the loss of this love of affection. In North Carolina case law, like the 1957 decision Bishop versus Glazner, spells out these elements and treats alienation of affection as a way to recover money damages for the loss and emotional harm tied to a relationship's breakdown. Critics argue these laws commodify relationships and are weaponized in messy divorces. You don't think? While supporters claim they deter adultery and give wrong spouses a legal remedy when a third party intentionally interferes with their marriage. Y'all don't see the humor in this? First of all, you're not going to deter adultery. Adultery, it goes all the way back to the beginning of times because it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. So people have been adulterous since maybe Adam and Eve, maybe a little bit after Adam and Eve, they've been adulterous, okay? Nothing deters adultery. Even burning in hell, quote unquote, don't deter that. So deter that. So suing, I don't think is going to stop adultery. So just that idea is idiotic in the first place. I understand the idea of being angry in a breakup because you were left for somebody else. Like, that takes a real hit on the pride. It's happened to me. It's happened to me, not in my marriage, but in relationships. You know, everybody, I done told the story when I was at college when the girl cheated on me and I was crying and beating the guy up and saying, hey, you know, I know this ain't your fault, but somebody got to feel my pain. I done told that story before, right? That's a painful thing, to be left for somebody else. For men, it hits our pride. Not to say that it's worse for a man or a woman. I'm just explaining from a male's point of view, because I don't understand from a female's point of view, because I'm not a female. I identify as cis male. So from a male's point of view, it hits the pride. It hurts. It really hurts. And if I could have sued somebody and got some money out the deal, that'd make me feel a little bit better. I mean, money does help with happiness. It helps. Doesn't create happiness, but it helps not being as sad if you get a little bit of that money. Now, I bet you're wondering, like, Bruce, okay, so you got the alienation of affection, like that's a cute little thing, but the second segment is typically a little bit more serious, and you're being silly. Why wouldn't you put Martin Luther King segment in the second segment? Because it seems like you're being silly. Well, let me tell you why this is in the second segment. Y'all remember Kyrsten? She is a former Arizona senator whose centralist brand, high-profile votes, and breaking from the Democrats. Remember, I told you in the first segment, the Dixiecrats broke from the Democratic Party and are now MAGA Republicans. right? Here is Kyrsten Sinema breaking from the Democrats on key issues and made her one of the most controversial figures in recent U.S. politics. She even changed her affiliation from a Democrat to an independent. Why did I bring up Homewrecker and this former senator? She is now facing a civil homewrecker lawsuit tied to an alleged affair with a married bodyguard under the alienation of affection law. Yes, that's right. This law is actually being used present day. And when I say present day, today, it is being used. Now, there are so many things about this story that I find humorous and interesting. First, the person. She started out as an Arizona legislator and then ran for U.S. Senate in 2018. Why was she important? She won an open seat that was vacated by Jeff Flake, defeating a Republican and becoming the first woman, dig this here, the first woman and first openly bisexual person elected to the Senate from Arizona. She's a trailblazer, right? She's an important figure in American history because she's the first, not only the first woman senator from the state of Arizona, which is an accomplishment in and of itself, shouldn't be an accomplishment in today's day and age, but is, but also openly bisexual. Now, the cynic in me says she had to run as a Democrat to be an open bisexual person running for Senate, because there's no way in hell she would win as an openly bisexual person running as a Republican. You want to know how I know this? Because Lindsey Graham hasn't come out yet. Okay, that's an accusation. That's hearsay. I don't have any fact to back that up. But, I mean, do you think I'm wrong? It's an accusation. It's not founded. I have no facts. Don't really care if he is or isn't. Think it would be important if he did come out, if he was gay. I'm just saying, if 1 + 1 = 2, then Lindsey Graham. But anyway, she was very important. And like I said, being a cynic, she had to run as a Democrat, right? She started out as a Democrat, but she curved out a little centralist ideology while she was actually a senator. She was often had a business-friendly profile, and like I said, she switched her registered affiliation from Democrat to independent, even though she was still caucusing with the Democrats. She opposed changing or weakening the Senate filibuster, helping block Democratic efforts to pass broad voting rights legislation. Like what Dr. Martin Luther King died for, and abortion protections. So, first woman senator out of Arizona, but blocking abortion protections. Definitely not a feminist. She helped stall the larger Build Back Better agenda, then negotiated changes to the Scaled Down Inflation Reduction Act, insisting on removing a tax hike on carried interest while supporting a new tax on stock buybacks. She often sided with Republicans on business, regulation, defense, and some spending issues, which is why outlets and scorecards consistently described her as one of the most conservative Democrats / independents in Congress. Once again, the cynic in me said, well, she had to run as a Democrat. She's going to be openly gay? Well, openly bisexual. Because remember, she had an affair with a bodyguard. That's the reason why I'm bringing all this up. It's all connected. I'm just giving you a little bit of her backstory while I bring back the Homewrecker thing, right? But like I said, the cynic in me, she had to run as a Democrat. She was not going to win and become the first female senator from the state of Arizona as a bisexual, openly bisexual Republican was not going to happen. And when she got elected, she proved who she was. Right? She didn't seek a second term. She announced that she wouldn't run for re-election in 2024 after years of backlash from Democratic voters and activists who felt betrayed by her blocking core party priorities such as the voting rights and social spending. Things that Martin Luther King died for. It's crazy how she would be one of the people that's going to celebrate him on his day, but actively voted against all of his stuff that he died for. And she ain't even a MAGA Republican. You see what I'm saying? It's not just MAGA. It's the hypocrisy of people who talk a good game, but don't ever back it up. Her approval numbers collapsed among Democrats in Arizona, of course, and she faced the prospect of a brutal three-way race against a Democrat and a Republican, which would have likely split the vote and risked an embarrassing loss. So she decided not to run. She framed her decision as rejecting partisan politics and suggested that there's no room politically for the kind of centralist deal-making identity she claimed. But she didn't claim that. She ran as an openly bisexual Democrat. That's how she ran. Anybody seeing that on the scorecard is going to be like, oh, she's openly bisexual Democrat. That means she's going to believe in social programs. She's going to be a feminist. She's going to believe in human rights. She's going to believe in voting rights. She got into office and didn't do any of those things. The switcheroo. She did the switcheroo. But I got to get back to this lawsuit. So this month, in January of our Lord 2026, she was being sued in federal court by Heather Amlow, the ex-wife of Sesma's former bodyguard, under North Carolina's alienation of affection law. They're popularly called the Homewrecker law. That's what I'm going to stick with. The complainant alleged that Sesma knowingly pursued an affair with her husband, a former U.S. Marshal and security detail member, while he was married with 3 kids, and that this relationship contributed to the breakdown of their 14-year marriage. All right. So you got a senator at the time having an affair with her bodyguard, all the while making it harder for people to vote, eliminating abortion protections for women. And she's also having an affair with the man that's supposed to be protecting her, like the real life movie The Bodyguard, but she ain't Whitney Houston and he ain't Kevin Costner, okay? He's got 3 kids and been married for 14 years. Y'all don't think this is funny? I think this is absolutely hilarious. The lawsuit claims that Sesma willfully and intentionally seduced and enticed him, including alleged romantic and sexual encounters, trips, and even paying for psychedelic treatment, and seeks at least tens of thousands of dollars in damages. Now, hold on. Hold on. We talk about remembering Martin Luther King. We talk about the voting rights, the civil disobedience, the movement for civil rights. Kyrsten Sesma runs as a Democratic candidate, openly bisexual, wins the Democratic seat, then in turns votes against the very principles that Martin Luther King died for. All the while, she's enticing, willfully, intentionally seducing her bodyguard with romantic and sexual encounters. Remember, she's bisexual, so I wonder what them sexual encounters was like. Okay, look, hey, that's a way to entice a man. Just saying. You bisexual and you enticing them and seducing them with sexual encounters. Come on now. Not only that, but trips, You flying him out. He being flown out. And you giving him psychedelic treatment? I mean, she sound like Freak. She sound like Adina Howard's Freak Like Me song was written specifically for her. Yeah, she turned my man out. From the lawsuit, it looks like she turned my man out. And I'm gonna be real honest. If you see Kyrsten, she ain't bad looking. I mean, she ain't bad looking. Is it my ideal type? No. But if I was gonna be willfully and intentionally seduced and enticed by being flown out for different romantic and sexual encounters from a bisexual woman. Now, I'm not down for no psychedelic treatment, but she was doing the most, the absolute most. This is wild. And she ain't young either. Like, she's only a few years older than me, like, but she almost 50, right? Like, she's still wild. Like, yes, she enticed my man. She seduced him. Now, of course, I'm not making her the villain. This is a two-party situation. He ain't had to, look, she could have been pressing up on him, and you got a wife for 14 years and 3 kids. And if you see a picture of him, he ain't all that, okay? Maybe he thought this was his shot. He getting flown out from a woman that is obviously more attractive, like on a scale of 1 to 10. He's like, and I be judging harshly. I only give myself a 7. So it's not like I put myself in the 10 category. I be judging harshly. If I'm a 7, I'm going to say he a 4. And I'm going to say she's a better than a 4, right? So maybe he was like, look, I'm getting flown out, get these sexual encounters from this bisexual senator, the first female senator from the state of Arizona. I mean, this is monumental. This is historic. And she gonna give me psychedelic treatments? I mean, he got turned out, but he's still like, it wasn't like he didn't have a choice. Like, he's at fault for this too. She hasn't publicly admitted any wrongdoing, and representatives from our office have declined to comment. But like, I've seen certain clips, like they were speaking at some town hall thing in Arizona, and as he's up there speaking, you can see in the background, she's like, look at my man. I'm proud of my man. They definitely had an affair. And it just goes to show you, sometimes you got to pay attention to who you elect. It's not always the affiliation on that voting ballot. There's nothing about her voting record, who she is as a person. Well, just because you're a Democrat don't mean that you won't have an affair. I know a lot of Democrats that had, affairs and things of that nature. President Bill Clinton. Anyway, but the principles that Martin Luther King died on, she wasn't upholding, right? And that's the reason why she switched parties and then tried to say that, she was stepping down because of partisan politics and that's not what she signed up for. No, I believe that she knew this was coming down the pike and that this was going to be damaging to her political career, because those trips, him being her bodyguard, yeah, there might be some money that was given or used that was supposed to be used, and you don't want to be investigated by the oversight committee. So, yes, that's what I think. And I think it's funny. My man's wife, she's going to get some get back. She's suing for tens of thousands of dollars. It's civil. She'll probably win if she got a strong case. If they are together, and it's been documented they are together. If I was on that jury, I'd award her, because yes, she very much was a response to the dilution of affection in that marriage. Absolutely. You can't tell me a man that's been with a woman for 14 years and had 3 kids with this woman did not love and have affection for this woman. Now, I know that some people out there will point out that there are absolutely cases where a man would not love a woman in that scenario, but at some point, he absolutely did. And a dilution of this marriage can be tied to the super freak of Arizona, the first female senator out of the state of Arizona, Kyrsten. She is super freak. Just like Rick James said and Adina Howard, freak until the day, until the dawn. We're getting dumber. Collectively, all of us. Getting dumber. When was the last time you remembered a phone number? You remember back in the day, if you are a millennial, maybe Gen Zer, like an older Gen Zer, you remember having to remember phone numbers. If you're a Gen X or boomer, like you absolutely remember. We had a whole bunch of numbers in our head. We had our best friend's phone number. We had multiple friends' phone numbers, our house phone, emergency numbers. We knew numbers in our head. I cannot remember a cell phone number to save my life. That's an exaggeration. Of course I could, but you know what I mean. Like, it is very difficult. We're getting dumber. Our short attention spans and our short-term memory, I believe, are being destroyed. And they're being destroyed by technology because we don't need to have it. I've got so many alarms on my phone to remind me about stuff. Dig this here. And I'm not talking about sleep. I'm not talking about wake-up alarms. I have alarms on my phone to remind me to do certain things. And then I have reminders of those reminders that are just 4 to 5 minutes later. Hey, don't forget you need to do this thing. And it is daily. What that does is it makes us lazier. We don't have to exercise that muscle, the short-term memory. We become dumber. There are people who drive the same route every day, but they use a GPS. You take away that GPS, they can't get to the same place they've been driving every day because they've been relying on the GPS. We're getting dumber. We're getting smarter and dumber. Like our ability, the kids, before they can say words, they know how to work a phone and tablet. It's remarkable. But there's also been some studies that kids are learning how to speak slower than previous generations. Like, there's a trade-off. There's always a trade-off. Why am I bringing this up? Because Matt Damon was just on the Joe Rogan show. Now, I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan. This popped up in my algorithm. And he was talking about how streaming services like Netflix call upon creators to dumb down material because people have short attention spans. What do I mean? So Matt Damon said Netflix is reshaping movies to cater to distracted, phone-scrolling viewers by front-loading big action and repeating the plot several times in dialogue. And he warned that this infringes on how stories are being told. Let's break that down. So typically, you rev up a story to get to a climax. But they're adding a climax in the beginning to draw people in and to stay invested and lead to another climax at the end. On top of that, they are repeating the plot and the dialogue throughout the movie, throughout the television show, because people are watching at home and scrolling on their phones. And you know what? They're right. Because I do it. Me and my sister talk about forensic files. It is weird. I will have it on the background while I'm playing video games. And I miss a lot because these old TV shows were expecting you to be sitting in front of the television show with nothing else to distract you but the television show. So of course you would be focused and they wouldn't have to repeat plot points. That's not the case anymore. You got to repeat those plot points because I'm looking at my phone, I'm playing video games, I'm doing something else while I'm watching something and I miss it. So yeah, it's catering to me, but it's also taking away the creative. And then I think about that and I think about something like this, a podcast, where if you're watching or you're listening, how I've got to keep you engaged. And this is no action. There are no scenes. I got graphics purposely to keep your eyes focused so that you hear what I'm saying, right? And also video titles to let you know, hey, this is what I'm talking about. If you're watching it, you've seen the graphics. Oh, by the way, this is Bruce Anthony, or it's Jay Andrea, or it's a guest. Oh, by the way, don't forget we got other YouTube exclusive. All those graphics are there for a reason. They have to be there. If you have a show where it's just you're watching and it's just a person on screen talking, there are no cuts, there's no graphics, you're going to get bored. You're going to get on your phone, you're going to do something else, you're going to miss the majority of the information that I'm giving. That's the reason why people joke on me. They say, Bruce, you repeat yourself a lot. Yeah, I repeat myself to reiterate the point because you may have missed it the first time. And this is crazy that now content creators, not just content, not just podcasting, or people that create reels on Instagram or TikTok, because this is the system in which you have to keep people's attention when you're doing content creation. I'm talking about long form content now, right? Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are making movies. And I'll be the first one to tell you, it is very difficult for me to sit down and watch a movie. I can watch 6 hours of a docuseries or 6 hours of 1 hour shows. I cannot watch 2 hours of a movie. It's very, very difficult for me. And if the movie is 2 hours, it takes me 2.5 hours to watch it because I'm going to pause it. I'm going to be on my phone. I'm going to have to rewind it. Our attention span is short. So he was on Joe Rogan's show promoting his new Netflix crime thriller, The Rip, with Ben Affleck. And he contrasted watching movies at home as opposed to the movie theater. And yes, when you're at the movie theater, you got to put your phone away. Like, you might get hurt if you're in the movie theater scrolling on your phone. Like, I can't remember which movie it was that I went to go see, but maybe it was like a year and a half ago. I went to go see a movie and these two dudes was just chit-chatting. I stood up, man, hey man, shut the F up. I'm trying to watch this movie. Now, because I'm 6'4", 240 pounds, they shut up. Well, you know, that could have been an altercation. But the fact of the matter is, they were being disrespectful because we're trying to watch the movie. Being at home, me and my brother and sister watching Jason Statham movies, we're all on our phones, we're all chit-chatting, we're pausing, rewinding. That's what we do because it's a home. It's a different level of attention and experience. But he was saying the main points is now the big action set pieces in the first 5 minutes of an action movie so people don't click away. Instead of the old model, which was a huge third act climax, right? He added that Netflix encouraged filmmakers to reiterate the plot 3-4 times in dialogue so people stay focused. He said, why is this dumbing down storytelling? He said, this approach is driven by data on short attention spans and retention, but that it is really going to start infringing on how people tell these stories. The implication is that these movies are being simplified and over-explained with louder, earlier spectacle to accommodate distracted viewers rather than trusting an attentive audience. And they're absolutely right, because the audience isn't attentive anymore. They're not. And it's due to technology. And I still don't think technology is a bad thing, but it is harming us. It's making us dumber. And it's making creators People who make iconic films. It's making them having to change. And as a creative person, I would hate, even though sometimes you do have to accommodate what your audience is going to be for whatever it is that you create. If there ever came a point in time when I would have to gear this podcast towards creative principles that I don't agree with, that's the end of this podcast. I'm done doing it. I'm done. I will not jeopardize my creative freedom in any way just to placate the masses. It's been told to me that this show would be more appealing if I was messier. And that's just not what I'm into. I mean, I'm a messy individual. I am a messy individual, but I like intellectual messiness, not stupid, throw your brain away, rot messiness. The show will never become that. And the moment I even start to lean in that direction, I'm not talking about a segment here, a segment there of being rot messiness, right? Like, okay, that's cool. But I'm talking about, like, if that ever became the show, Jerry Springer was a serious talk show at one point. And it devolved into what it later became. I got a lot of respect for Jerry Springer and everything that he did, but that wouldn't be me. That I won't sell out what I believe in just to become more popular. I've never believed in doing that. I understand Netflix saying, hey, look, man, let's just make a few adjustments. You can still have the big climatic third act, but let's add something in that first act. And oh, by the way, let's keep driving home what the plot points is. I could do that and still create and still have my creative freedom. But the moment they start to add more and more restrictions is the moment where our entertainment is going to be so watered down that we are no longer entertained. We won't be entertained anymore. And that's a scary world to live in. But it's a world that we've created. And I'm not a hypocrite. I understand that I'm part of the problem in my personal life. I'm part of that problem because it's really tough for me to go to movie theaters. It got to be a special occasion. I could think in my head the next movies that I'm going to see in the movie theater. I'm going to see Supergirl. I'm going to see Avengers Doomsday. I'm going to see Spider-Man. That's it. I'm not going to the movie theaters for anything else. So I like to be at home. I like to be at home, not only because I could take pee breaks because these movies are entirely too long, but also because the movies are entirely too long. I can't sit still in a seat for that long. I need to get up, do something. I need to get on my phone. I have to. And now Netflix is saying, yeah, I know you. And because I know you, I know that audience member, I'm going to need these creatives to write and create geared towards that audience. And in the process, we are getting watered down entertainment. The days of The Godfather might be over. Might be. But, man, we got a lot more to choose from. And every now and then, like the movie Sinners, you'll get some original type concept that'll take you by storm, because every now and then we do have the attention. We do. We can focus if something is good enough. To focus in and hone in for a good 2 hours on one thing and enjoy it together as a community, because that's what we do. When we go to a movie theater, we join together as a community, watch something, and enjoy it. And even every now and then, like when, Captain America says, Avengers assemble, movie theaters go crazy. That's community. Much like the community that Dr. Martin Luther King was trying to foster and died for. Just a thought. Just a thought. Everything is connected. Let's put down our phones every now and then and enjoy each other in all our diversity, in all our differences. Learn and be in community. But on that note, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for watching. And until next time, as always, I'll holla. Woo! That was a hell of a show. Thank you for rocking with us here on Unsolicited Perspectives with Bruce Anthony. Now, before you go, don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, comment, and share our podcast wherever you're listening or watching it to it. Pass it along to your friends. If you enjoy it, that means the people that you rock with will enjoy it also. So share the wealth, share the knowledge, share the noise. And for all those people that say, well, I don't have a YouTube. If you have a Gmail account, you have a YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can actually watch our video podcast and YouTube exclusive content. But the real party is on our Patreon page, After Hours Uncensored and Talking Straight-ish. After Hours Uncensored is another show with my sister. And once again, the key word there is uncensored. Those are exclusively on our Patreon page. Jump onto our website at unsolicitedperspectives.com for all things us. That's where you can get all of our audio, video, our blogs, and even buy our merch. And if you really feel generous and want to help us out, you can donate on our donations page. Donations go strictly to improving our software and hardware so we can keep giving you guys good content that you can clearly listen to and that you can clearly see. So any donation would be appreciative. Most importantly, I want to say thank you for listening and watching and supporting us. And I'll catch you next time. Audi 5000. Peace.